Tomatoes in the yard strip. That's a clear aesthetics violation right there.
Doyle, that's private property you're standing on.
I'm conducting a routine HOA inspection. These plants are in violation of community code.
Third time this month. I've been patient.
Every neighborhood has that one guy who takes the HOA too seriously. Ours had Doyle Mason. He strutted around with a clipboard tucked under one arm and a phone, ready to snap photos of anything he decided violated community aesthetics. He was not elected. He was not appointed. He just decided he was the patrol. In the morning he scaled our fence at 5:30 to photograph Grandpa's tomato plants. Was the morning he picked the wrong house. Comment below which country you are watching from because this story travels. Grandpa was 75 years old and a veteran, and he had been growing those tomatoes for 11 years. I was half asleep pouring cereal when I heard him on the porch say, "There he goes again." I looked out and there was Doyle climbing our fence, snapping photos and muttering about community aesthetics. I wanted to confront him, but Grandpa raised one hand and said, "Patience. Let a fool show himself long enough and he will write his own ending." This was not the first time. Twice before we caught Doyle near our shed. Once he rattled the door looking for contraband. Grandpa reported him to the HOA board both times, but President Linda Clay brushed it off with her permanent smile and said Doyle was just enthusiastic. Grandpa called the sheriff's office and they explained the problem. Unless we caught Doyle in the act and pressed charges immediately, it was our word against his. So Grandpa made a plan. For 3 days he tinkered in the garage humming old country tunes while I handed him tools. By the 4th day, our iron gate had a new modification. Low-voltage electric wiring legal under North Carolina electrical code provided it was properly marked. Grandpa posted a bright yellow sign on the gate. Warning, electrified gate. Trespassers will be shocked. Then he sat on the porch with his black coffee and waited. Doyle came before dawn, just like clockwork. The second his hand gripped the gate, there was a sharp snap and he yelped, stumbled back, arms flailing, and landed in the dirt. He scrambled up and limped toward the street. Grandpa leaned back in his chair and said softly, "That was the sound of justice." By noon, Linda Clay had called an emergency HOA meeting. Doyle sat at the table with his arm in a sling and pointed at Grandpa, calling the gate an electrified weapon that had nearly killed him. Grandpa placed a folded permit on the table and said it was a document issued under the state electrical code, fully legal and clearly signed with the required warning notice posted. Linda called the installation aggressive and said the HOA had the right to regulate it. Grandpa's voice dropped into the quiet tone that made everyone sit up. He said the HOA could regulate all they wanted, but Doyle had trespassed 3 times in North Carolina. Trespassing statute made that a crime, and he was done warning him, and the next time he was pressing charges, the room shifted. A woman said Doyle had come into her backyard the month before to measure her shrubs. Another said he had photographed her children's bikes and called them an eyesore. Linda banged the gavel, but the damage was done. Doyle did not take the humiliation quietly. For 2 days he circled the block in his truck, slowing in front of our driveway. Grandpa barely acknowledged him. Then, on the 3rd night, just past midnight, I woke to rustling near the gate. I looked out and there was Doyle with a flashlight and bolt cutters. Grandpa was already on the porch with a small handheld remote. He told me to watch. The moment Doyle clamped the cutters onto the gate, Grandpa clicked the remote and the wires surged. Doyle jolted, dropped the cutters, and stumbled into the mud. Grandpa sipped his coffee and said, "Trespassing again." His phone was already recording. Every stutter, every curse, every slip in the mud, captured in full. HD, Doyle called 911 screaming about attempted murder and an illegal fence. 5 minutes later, patrol cars lit up the yard. Officers looked from Doyle muddy and trembling to Grandpa sitting on the porch like it was a regular Thursday. One officer asked about the electrical device. Grandpa handed over the laminated permit without standing up, then handed them his phone with the video still playing. The officers watched Doyle climb, cut, and shock himself in high definition. One looked up deadpan and asked if Doyle had trespassed. Doyle said he was conducting an HOA inspection. The other officer asked about the midnight timing and the bolt cutters. Under state code, Doyle was facing criminal trespassing, vandalism, and attempted theft. His 911 call added a false police report charge on top. They cuffed him in front of the glowing gate, while neighbors watched from the street. For the first time, they were not whispering. They were clapping. Grandpa leaned back in his chair and said, "Sometimes justice just needs a little electricity." Doyle sat in the back of the cruiser, covered in mud with his clipboard confiscated and his reputation destroyed. The gate he thought he could cut through had turned into the thing that finished him. Drop a like if this story hit different, and tell me in the comments what you would have done if Doyle had been climbing your fence.